Welcome to the Matt Phillips Podcast. I am Matt Phillips, your sales leadership coach, mental toughness expert, and founder of Matt Phillips Coaching. We help sales managers and leaders make more money, save time, and become kick-ass leaders of their sales teams. And that's what we're here to talk about on this podcast. We are here to give you the tools and tactics to build a well-oiled sales machine and teach you the mental toughness skills so you can show up confident, focused, emotionally in control, and ready to energize your team. It's time to talk sales leadership and mental toughness. Let's get into today's episode. Welcome to today's podcast episode. It is Matt Phillips. So excited to introduce you to a very special guest, a man that I've gotten to know over the past, honestly, about month or so, and got to spend about 2.5 hours with some of his team members last week in Nashville, Tennessee. So this is going to be a special one. He has got gems and nuggets, I promise you, because I was pulling them out of him when we met in Nashville last week. But so excited to introduce you to Steve Schaub. Steve is the CEO of Yes Communities. He's actually one of the founding members of Yes Communities back in 2007. And he served as the company's COO for about 10 years from 2007 to 2017 and took on the CEO role starting in 2018. As far as what he does in that role, I think it's easier to start with what he doesn't do, but it's everything for operations, acquisitions, capital markets, corporate strategies, people development, everything in between. Prior to Yes Communities, earlier in his career, he actually held several senior operational positions at both ROC and Chateau. He was divisional president at Chateau during that time there. And at Yes Communities, I find this fascinating because the story behind it, I think, will inspire you, and we'll dive into kind of why Steve got into it in the first place. But over the time, it has grown to the largest privately held REIT in the United States. Now, set that aside for a minute. In 2019, you need more stats on this gentleman. He was named one of the top 100 business entrepreneurs by Goldman Sachs. CEO was awarded the prestigious Chairman Award by Manufacturing Housing Institute. I could go on and on. He's a graduate of Metro State University here in Denver, Colorado. And the last thing I want to talk to you about, Steve, before I welcome on the show is his passion for the company, his passion for people, his passion for family really sticks out. And it's one of the reasons that I wanted to have Steve on this show. So without further ado, Steve, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Matt. I appreciate being asked on and your audience. It's a privilege and an honor to be able to speak with you. And hopefully, as Matt said, I won't let you down. We'll share some nuggets. And I don't mean the Denver Nuggets, who, by the way, last night won. For those out there that might be Lakers fans, I'm sorry, but I'm really not. But glad to be here, man. Thanks for having me today.
Absolutely. Yes, it was a great game. I always love sweeping a series, that's for sure. There's lots of different topics I want to dive into with you. And where I like to start these is asking a pretty big question, and then we'll dive into your story a little bit. But what is the best leadership advice you've ever received, and how do you use it today?
Matt, I'll tell you a little bit. Keep my stories short. Some people say my short stories are long, but when I got into this industry, you mentioned ROC, and my career went back before that. But I was a young man, and I was about 26 years old. And the challenge I had, the company that hired me was a very close knit company, and the gentleman who was interviewing me, who later in life became like a father to me, had a right arm that was going to become my right arm. And she used to be the controller, assistant controller of the company, had decided she wanted to be in the operational field, was a CPA. They held a master's in international finance, on and on. And quite frankly, I was very nervous about taking on this role, if it was somebody that was frankly much smarter than I was. And, this business, I'll be honest, is a little bit about street smart, and I have a lot of that. I understand how to make $1 into $2, and she didn't. And we made an amazing team. And the reason it worked out, when I talked to my father, I told him that, I was a little discerned about, somebody with, frankly, a heck of a resume and very intelligent, that reporting to me, and how do I deal with that challenge? And his
Mm.
advice, frankly, has lasted me to today, and I use it and I share it frequently. And he said to me, son, when you hire people smarter than you frankly prove you're smarter than them. And so I've made it my philosophy to surround myself, frankly, with people that are smarter and better than I am. And it has escalated me in my career. It's pushed me forward. And I've used a lot of those people as inspiration. A lot of them have tremendous advice and knowledge in their specific areas. But I tell you that was probably the one thing that has stuck with me for many many years. And again, I'll repeat it. Hire people smarter than you, which proves you're smarter than them. And as I've used that with many young people around me, I think it's caught on, and we see that quite frequently. You let them kind of push you forward and use them as your advisors and so forth to your benefit.
Yes. Yes. I love that advice. Well, and this is such an interesting topic, right? Because when we're hiring and developing teams, those individuals are coming across our path, hopefully a lot, but a lot of people hesitate with that, Steve. And I don't know if you experienced that in your career as well, or I've seen other people struggle with that. And how did you, because you have a different mindset, right? And getting to spend that time with you, back even in Nashville and before that, you have a different way of thinking, behaving, acting, and developing teams. And how did you personally work through that to say, like, that is a good thing where others kind of pull back? Like, how do you coach people to take the step forward with those smarter people? Because that can be scary, right? That they're really smart. But how have you done that yourself? And how do you coach others to do that?
It depends on each person. People are so different. And one of the things I can tell you, and I'll probably mention it a few times in here, is I really try to hire people that have great confidence. And that works whether it's in sales or executive management. But I try to use their confidence to coach them on what they are great at. And so I'll give you an example. A lot of times when people do reviews, and I'm big on reviews, by the way. I think it's a good measurement of where you are in life at the business.
Yes.
But a lot of people will tell you, here's the 10 things you're good at, and here's the 10 you're bad at, or you're weak at. Let's put it that way.
Yes.
And then what they want to do is build a plan to work on your weaknesses. And what I've told them is do what you do well and hire for your weaknesses. And so, for example, as CEO of the company, my COO, who you also met, Karen Hamilton, she's an incredibly detailed person. She's been pulled up through the ranks with me and may or may not be the right CEO in right other companies, but as an operational CEO, for me, she's perfect. And Karen's into the detail and the intricacies, and she really gets into the minutia. And I hate that, by the way. And so you can't teach me that. And so I tell people out there, let's talk about your strengths. What are you really good at? Why did I hire you? And let's talk about salespeople for a minute. Sometimes salespeople are absolutely phenomenal at relationships, negotiations, but maybe their follow up on the paperwork, the details, they're not great at. And I would hear sometimes people say, I had a guy that was one of my top salespeople and selling multi millions a year of manufactured housing for me. And someone said, Steve, his name is JC. God, he's terrible at the paperwork. My God, you've got to replace him. And I thought, we made almost $2 million net off of that guy. Why would I replace him? Why wouldn't I go hire him a $50,000 assistant to do the paperwork? Which I did. My point behind that, Matt, is many times people are looking at your weaknesses. I think you should look at your strengths. Define what you're really, really good at and master it. Don't be a jack of all trades. Be the master of one. And when you master what you're really good at, then surround yourself with people around it. So a CEO, for example, I understand business and finance and debt and lending. But if you think I want to get into, all of the nits and gnats and all the numbers, what I do is have a team that can say, here's what it looks like. Here's the numbers. Here's what's happening. But I'm the guy that understands it. I mentioned earlier that I'm street smart. I can look at it and say, how do I go out there and take this data and make it into more? How do I grow? So you can relate that to any business. If you're in sales, how do you go out there and move your business forward to do more deals, more opportunities, while having somebody else who's doing the busy work because you hate that part of the business? Anyway, and that can shift the other way, by the way, too. maybe you're great at the details, so you got to hire a great salesperson. But
Yes.
by getting people to understand that
Mm.
and reassuring them that these aren't people that are replacing them, they're people that help accelerate them.
Wow. That's what's so critical, right? I think it's exactly what you said. It's to augment, it's to help you optimize, it's to help you scale. So how to remove some of the constraints so you can go do what you do best. I love that. I love those sort of things. That's something I face in my business too, right? All the time of where do I focus my time and what's the best use? And I've had to learn sometimes the hard way of I'd be too slow in outsourcing or hiring someone to do those tasks. And if I would have done it 6 months earlier, I would have been potentially a lot further ahead. And once you release it, it's like, like this huge weight lifted off your shoulders.
Well, it is, right? I mean, it's funny. I'm fairly handy, but I'll talk to people that are not, and they might work on something 3 times and pay double what it costs because they worked on it, right? I mean, hire the guy who knows how to fix our lady, and that's what you have to do in life is look for people that offset you, that really help you do better. And if it's something you love to do, I would tell you surround yourself with the best, right? I mean, find people who do what you do and even do it better. And you don't have to always be a leader. It's okay to follow. So, don't be afraid to learn from them. But, kind of different subject on you there, but just a side note.
Yeah, no, very true. Well, how did you get in this business? Like what started you in this industry and has led you to where you're at today?
I tell people all the time, and like you, Matt, I know your story, and who would think a guy playing D1 ball would work for an accounting firm, etc. But you did, and
Yes.
and as you told me your story, I think that first of all, life I always say is full of whys, right? And I tell everybody, depending on which why you go on, will define your life. And so really think about those turns, those critical moments. You'll know they come because something will happen. It could be a move, it could be an opportunity, it could be a business life decision, but those decisions will define your entire life. And I've been blessed. So first, let me tell you my priorities in life, and then I'll tell you how I got to where I am.
Right.
I'm married and I have 2 grown children and a grandchild on the way. And I have 3 things that I rule my life by. First is my God. Whatever you believe in God, I support you.
Mm-hmm.
And number 2 is I believe in family. And I believe if those 2 are correct, they support number 3, the job, if you have to work late, whatever. So those 3 things are critical. And so as I went down this road of life, I'm lucky. I've been with my wife 33 years,
Wow.
and been a great partner. But you look for opportunity, and so I started in California, where I actually met my wife in Denver, and she moved out there with me and worked for a big apartment company out there called the Irvine Company.
Mm-hmm.
And then moved to Denver. Wanted to start a family, wanted to get married, and was back in the apartment industry. And long story made short, I had an opportunity to move to Dallas with the company, and kind of committed and wished I hadn't, quite frankly. I didn't want to move to Dallas.
Yes.
And a recruiter came knocking on my door and said, look, I might have an opportunity. And, a couple lunches later, I met the company, and it was in manufactured housing. And, I was like, God, do I really want to do this? And after I swear to God, the longest interview in life, 60 days, it was probably, 8 lunches and 2 dinners. And I'm like, look, if you're going to make me an offer, make me an offer. But they were a small growing company and they were trying not to make a mistake. And I don't think they believe they did, but they did hire me into this industry. And, I also believe life is full of rewards and risks. And, as a young man, I had 1 baby and 1 on the way. And the company merged with another company out of Michigan. And they said, look, we have a vice president opportunity for you. What do you think? And, I had a 2-month-old infant at the time. And, again, I mentioned God and my family. My wife said, let's do what you think's best for our family. And I prayed about it. And we moved and, kicked off a career that, was unbelievable. I was building and developing properties, and I was vice president of development. And by the way, I'd never developed a property in my life. So how I became vice president of it was interesting. It was because I was great at building tremendous sales teams, and they needed to sell a lot of homes. They needed to build a lot of homes. They needed to fill new developments. And so
Yes.
they were using my skills and pairing them with what they thought would be the best opportunity, which it was.
Yes.
That went on for, I'm going to say about 5 years, Matt. And then the company said, look, we should come to Denver and be president of our development company and, take over the whole thing. So I did. Happy to be back in Denver.
Yes.
And did that for a couple of years. And that company was succeeding when the company decided to basically get out of the business and sell. And so at that point, they were a California-based company, and I wasn't moving. And
Yes.
I'm sorry, a Chicago-based company, and I wasn't moving. And decided, what do I do next? And again, pivotal moment.
Yes.
And I was doing some side business that I knew how to do, and to keep cash flow. But me and the guy who originally hired me into that business, the prior CEO of that company, and then the COO went off and basically started another company. And it was a capital company.
Yes.
And what we did is we invested money in new businesses, right? Things that were taking off. They were already going, but we would use our banking, money, relationships to try to seed these little companies.
Yes.
We also owned some manufactured home communities we bought as part of the deal. We owned pig farms. We owned restaurants.
Wow.
I could go on for hours, all the things we invested in. Good news is we made more than we lost.
That's good.
and again, pivotal moment. 2007 comes along, and Clayton Homes, a large manufacturer in the manufactured housing industry, a long-term friend and advocate of ours, said, look, we're in the community business, and we think you'd be a better operator of this business. We build houses, and Warren Buffett had bought it and said, we'd like to sell it. And we said, okay, we think we're interested. And so, we negotiated what we thought was an amazing deal in the end of 2007. Had the opportunity to meet Warren Buffett. I will tell you, he's just like probably what you see on TV. He's like your grandfather, very nice, gentle man, and enjoyed talking to him.
Yes.
One thing he said to me, we were talking about wealth, and he said, do you think that the man that owns all of the land or has all of the money is wealthy? And I had to think about it. And he said, well, I don't know. I said, I guess the land. He said, you'd be right, because you can't make more land. And it was an interesting comment, right? And we had several other conversations that will continue on, but it was such a pleasure to meet him. But on this pivotal moment, we had negotiated a small company we were buying, about $300 million. The reality of it was we had worked to get everything put together, and this is going into January of 2008. We got the company started called Yes Communities, and Yes was an interesting deal because we debated on whether to get back in the industry. It was a business that people had basically said it was a dinosaur. It was a business full of regulations and no's. And we said, how do we say yes? And we sat there and talked about naming the company. How do we inflict a culture and environment where people want to say yes to the customer? And it doesn't mean we don't ever say no. We do, but it's things like, yes, we'll put in third car parking. Yes, we allow pets. Yes, we allow dogs. It was all the things that people wanted over time, and so we said we need to find a way to say yes. And interesting, Matt, I remember they called me and said, what do you think about calling it Yes Communities? My first thought was, oh my God, I'm not naming it Yes Communities. That's a stupid name. And that's the God honest truth. But the longer I thought about it, the more I liked it. And the good news is it did do what I wanted to do. And it really built a culture in a company where people own, they believe, we do good things for people around the country.
Yes.
And continues to be a great company that's really doing great things in America.
Yes. Well, it's incredible. I can't remember who, when I was with you all in Nashville, was explaining like this, the whole concept of yes, right? How do we say yes to people? And they were comparing it to a community where you see, I probably have these in my neighborhood, I'm sure, where it's like no skateboarding, no double parking, no this, no that. And frankly, that makes you want to do it. But that aside, that shifts the script, even from a mindset perspective of like, yes, we do things differently here. And yes, we'll make these things work. Maybe you still can't skateboard, but Yes, you can skateboard just over here. So I love that, the way that was phrased to me, because it makes so much sense. And, psychologically, when you look, I find this powerful too, especially when I ask children, I ask them a certain question, they say, yeah, they answer, yeah. And psychologically, when you answer yes, it's the confident, you're seen as more confident, more competent, even just with switching from yeah to yes. So I think that's incredible. But a random side note, but you're a pretty courageous person. Do you see yourself as courageous, as confident? Because to invest in these businesses, take those shifts, still doing it, that's a lot of courage. Like how did you assess and like come to the conclusion like this is the right step and I'm going to be confident in that decision? Because you have an like essence about you where you can tell you're confident. Where does it come from?
I think part of it is knowing your craft, right, and what you're good at. And I think that when you really know something, confidence naturally comes to it. Yeah, you can tell people that are unconfident because they're trying to find a way to explain maybe something they don't know or they don't understand. So, I've done this a long time. So I think that it's built great confidence, and with success and failures, you grow, right? I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't tell you I had plenty of failures. I did, and I think those failures actually made me more confident and stronger.
Mm.
I think that the thing that I would tell you, and only a few people know this, is that frankly we risked everything we own to start this company. Me and my wife, with others, but we
Yes.
risked all. And people have asked me, "Wow, that's incredible! Wasn't that concerning?" And I sit back now and think, well, it should have been, but I didn't really think about it because I never thought about failing. I never thought about failure. I just knew that we would be successful. I knew we would win at the end, being providing for a lot of people, including my family. And I guess I never thought about the failure, right? I mean, I do tell people sometimes what I do if I'm challenged is say, look at what the worst case scenario is, whatever it would be. And if you can accept worst case, I'm not saying like it. If you can accept it, you already know now what's the worst thing. Anything else is better. So you know what worst case is, everything else gets you better. But I said on a personal level, we never even had that conversation. Was it stressful? Was it a lot of work? Were there some hard times? Absolutely,
Yes.
absolutely. But I guess to say I had courage, maybe I had too much courage because I never really thought about the failure side. I just didn't think, well, okay, if this doesn't work, it's going to work. It's just, is it going to work good or amazing? And my whole life I've never accepted good. And I, by the way, don't accept it from anybody that works for me. I expect amazing. And if you can give me amazing, then we're really gonna be successful together.
Love that. Yeah, I often describe like I think getting into sales but starting a business too, it's also I kind of joke that I think I was naive to the whole process. And I was just kind of like, it'll work out. And here we are. I didn't really understand the risk involved. So maybe I'm just naive to the whole thing, Steve. I don't know.
Well, that's not a bad thing, Matt. I mean, it's as you can relate, and I'm sure people have read your story after listening to your podcast. Is that you decided that you were just going to risk it, and I think that it is scary when you have children and family, but if you believe in yourself, you're really not that worried about it. It's just how fast you get there, how quick can I get there, and once you get there, how do you continue to make it into more, grow it into more, whatever it would be, right? I do
Yes.
think that people that usually fail is because they become complacent. They just kind of live where they're at. And I just think you always have to grow forward. I don't think you can stop growing. I think you always have to be pushing forward in anything, whether it's marriage or it's work or whatever. You can't stand still.
Yes. Well, and let's talk sales teams specifically, because you mentioned you're a great builder of sales teams, and I believe that I, got to experience and see some of the people and spend time with them as well. What are some of your secrets to success of building like great sales teams and building great sales people? What's worked for you?
Well, I'm going to tell you two things, and I keep talking about these moments in life, but
Mhm.
we had an opportunity in 2000, it's either 2010 or 2011. And without getting to the whole story, but we had an opportunity to get a bunch of homes, like 1,100 of them. And our company was fairly small at the time. And we did. We got them, and we built basically a 3-year plan to sell and fill these houses. And I had this idea of, why don't we bring our teams together? And we were small back then, maybe 90 properties, and said, all right, well, how do we kind of make an all-out focus for our sales teams? And the communities all work together, right? So it takes more than just a salesperson. Yes. But how do we get everybody focused on how do we sell and lease as many homes as we can over, say, a 4-month period? And so we developed a thing called, back then it was an event called Pedal to the Metal. It was built around race cars. We had a huge event. We brought all of our people in, and there was probably about, I don't know, 300 people there, 400 people. And what I learned from that event is we sat down, and normally, you say, okay, here's the goal. I want you to do X or Y. If you're a salesperson, I need you to sell 5 or 3. And I said, I know where I want to be. Let's ask them where they think they can get in the next 90 days. And so they had these breakout sessions and met with all the salespeople and managers and said, let's write it down. Right. And I said, okay, yes. Give me the numbers. Give me the numbers. What do you guys think after they brought them? And I'll be honest with you. I would have been very happy if we could have filled 150 houses. And they said, well, we think that, we can basically do about 450 homes. I thought, oh my gosh, it's unbelievable. And the event ended, and everybody went back to work, and all the teams were working together. If one was getting things done, they moved to the other team to help out. We have properties all over the place, right? In Texas, we have dozens and dozens of properties. So if one hit their goal, the teams would shift and help each other. And it was this breed of enthusiasm. And when I sat down with my board and my CEO, then I gave him the numbers. And frankly, they almost kind of laughed. And he said, so you're going to do 450 houses in 3 months. You did like 150 for the year last year. I said, yeah. He said, you really think they can do it? Well, I said, if I didn't believe in them, then why do I have them? I said, I believe they can do it. They set the goals. And so they got this whole thing going. It was motivational. It was exciting. Everybody was working their rear ends off. And we're going to have a big meeting in the 5th month called the Summit. We bring them all back and celebrate, but they set their goal, right? I'd have been happy with a couple hundred houses. We had 1,100 houses that we had bought. And long story made short, we got to the end and they didn't hit the 450 houses. They sold 1,000 houses. Well, actually sold and filled. And
get out of here.
Unbelievable. It changed our company. The cash flow was unbelievable and allowed us to do things we never dreamed we could do with this business. My point on that, Matt, was many times, my opinion is our companies make the mistake of setting the objectives. They say, okay, here's where we want to be. Here's how you get there. Go do your job, Mr. Sales Guy, or whatever it's going to be. And I think that when you challenge your teams, and I would tell sales managers to do your people, sit down and ask them, so what can you do this month? What's your goal? What do you think you could do? I mean, I want you to give me everything. Leave nothing out there. If you had to go like crazy this month, what can you do? I think I could get 5. You've never done more than 2. And it's all attitude. They hit it. And I'll never forget, I called one of my salespeople in the field, and she said to me, Steve, I'm going to sell. I brought the number 5 up. I'm going to do 5 houses by Saturday, and I want to take off Sunday and Monday. And I said, well, you sell 5 houses in 5 days, and you go ahead and do it. So I called her on Wednesday, and I said, hey, it was like Wednesday morning, and I'll never forget it. I said, how are you doing? She said, well, I've sold 2. I said, okay, well, you said 5. And she said, and it's only Wednesday. And so, she hit her numbers, again, was setting it. The other thing, Matt, I would tell you that is a secret for me with my team is I believe that you have to provide the vision. And so every year as a CEO, and I do work with my entire team to be strategic, but what is the vision of this company? And I believe that if your people don't know what the vision is, if you go up and say, where are you trying to go as a company? And they don't know. I think you failed as a CEO.
Yeah.
And so they should know the vision. I'm not saying every net, but what's your vision? What's your key things? And so I built another thing called PIMA, and that stands for plan, execute, measure, and adjust. And I say every year we're going to have a plan, and everybody's going to know what it is. Then we're going to figure out what we have to do to execute, and along the way we're going to measure it. And then if it isn't working, we're going to adjust. And if it's working really well, we're going to adjust it and use it for other people. But if you ever, in my opinion only, if you want to know how a company's doing, go up and walk to the people and say, so what's the plan this year? What's the goal of your company? What are you trying to accomplish? And I'll bet you a lot of times you go up to companies, I don't know. I'm just the guy that does this or that. And, I try to also make sure my people know what their purpose is. So, I have title clerks, they handle all the paperwork for sales and transactions. And you go up to them and say, well, what's your purpose? Well, I basically just make sure the paperwork gets done. I said, no, you're the last key to ensuring that they own their home. You are ensuring that family now has the American dream. You realize when you're done, they just got their first home. And so you have to go through and talk to people about purpose. And all these pieces go together, man. I'm kind of jumping around on you. But I think you have to have purpose on your role. You have to have a vision and a plan. And if you can execute it, along with great expectations from the people that have to do them, I think you can be very successful. It's worked really well for me.
People carry around PIMA cards.
That is true. They do in their wallets.
I saw them with my own two eyes.
That is true. That is true.
I was emailed from Karen with an example PIMA card.
Yes, good.
And
good.
Part of my process, I don't know, is before meeting with you, I always like to talk to just people from the company at different levels and just to get a gauge for the culture and the business a little bit before I walk into a workshop or speech or anything like that. And so I talked to 4 other individuals outside of the leaders that I met with you that day, Steve. And a number of them brought up the PIMA card and showed me the PIMA card. And what fascinated me was it was ingrained in the culture of this, right? And I'll go at the sales team in a bit, but how do you guys keep so consistent where it becomes part of the culture of it? Because I'll tell you, just being in the room with you all, and I told you this when we were there, like it's a different feel, it's a different culture. It's the people are bought in, they're excited to be there. And there's challenges, right? Nothing's perfect by any means, but there's just this energy. There's an energy in that room that is pretty unique and I work with a lot of different companies. It's very unique and very special. And part of that's the PIMA and the way they talk and all that sort of stuff. How do you and the leadership team keep that just ingrained? Like this is the culture. Like you've set the standard, and you keep the standard. But how do you do that? How do you talk about that? Whether we're talking a sales team or just an entire organization, it's pretty unique.
Well, it takes time, man. I mean, it doesn't happen overnight, right? It's like working out. You don't get in shape after one workout. And so we repeat. And I believe in you have to hear it, you have to see it, and you have to write it. And so, we do it over and over. And so I'll tell people, get out a pen, write down this. Then I'll talk to them about it, right? And so they can see it in front of them. They've written it down. I'm trying to ingrain it in their memory. And so, we've been doing it now for years, and we talk about it with everybody new that comes on. And we use it as really the formal process of the company. And so every time we have a problem, I'll say, okay, well, you had a plan, you executed, it's not working very well. We know that based on the measurements and the numbers. So what are you doing to adjust it? What's the next plan? Because this plan didn't work. So then they start back at the P again. Let's build a plan. And how are we going to execute it? And then how are we going to measure it? And if it's going well, you don't have to adjust it. And so that's the whole goal, right? And so I do it with everything we do. If somebody's missing their numbers, we say, okay, well, clearly what we're doing is not working. So what's the new plan? And so we refer to it often. We use it every year. We set up our PIMA. And so we actually send out to everybody saying, we're talking about that vision. Here's the plan. Here's the high level execution. Here's the high level measurements, and the adjustments blank, because we don't adjust because right now we're just putting it out there. Then throughout the years we go through it, there might have been some adjustments on things that we had to do or some movements we had to make, so we can look back and say, yeah, that did work. That was good. We adjusted because it wasn't working very well.
Yes.
And I think sometimes people build a plan and they stick to it to a fault. They stick to it till, frankly, they fail. And so, we want you to adjust and come back around. And so with anything we do, we repeat, right? Keep telling them, keep talking to them, keep it simple. We use the KISS principle, and it works. It works, and that's really been a key to our forte. I mean, to our company. And it's funny, interesting being in that room, Matt. There's about 70 people there, and I can't tell you how many long-term employees I have that have been there for years and years and years and years. And people said, "Well, why don't they leave?" I said, "I don't give them a reason to." Right? They like the company, right? They perform, we take good care of them, and it's a win-win scenario. But anyway.
And it was interesting too, the people in the room, not all of those individuals were like born and bred in the company, right? They came up from day one and, worked for since 2007. Like, that's not the case. There's been acquisitions along the way. And there's a consistency in acquisitions as well with the homegrown folks. Is that onboarding process from like, we acquire this company to bringing you on? I mean, that sounds like it's all consistency of like, hey, here we are. Have you heard of Pima before? Like, how do you?
That's a tough one. I will tell you that depending on the acquisition and how well the people have been hired and coached for the right role, really depends on how many of them make it. Right? We've had acquisitions where quite a bit make it with us, and they learn, and we roll it out. We do an onboarding process, but the onboarding is really just step one of probably 100. Right? So step one is get them on, tell them about the business. But we start when we interview and hire people and tell them about the company and tell them kind of our expectations, who we are, what our attitude is, things that we do, how we give back. And we believe we have a Yes We Cares charity, and we do a lot for our residents and for areas around us. It's kind of who we are. And, what we're not trying to do is bring people on that are just looking for an 8 to 5 job. I mean, you always get them somewhat, but that's not who we want. We want somebody who, is looking to be part of something and want to be part of a business and help it grow. And make no mistake, we do have people who move on. As I said, some of my senior leaders have been here a long time. But my goal is, if you leave me, I hope you're much better when you leave than when you join me, right? And I hope whoever I get is better than the one that I lost. But that's all part of it.
Yes. Well, one thing we talked about, because I think a lot of people, when things are going well, especially in sales and other parts of the organization, things hunky-dory, right? And everybody's happy, no problems whatsoever. You and I talked briefly, in Nashville about, well, what about I think there's difficulty in letting people go or having them move on or taking on a different role. And I want to talk a little bit about that and call it the person's not performing at the level that we want them to, right? Maybe they're at that, not even good, but they're not close to amazing, which is the type of people you're looking for, Steve. How have you found like it best to help approach those people, coach those people, so they're in the best situation, or as a leader to prepare for a conversation like that? Because it can be difficult.
Well, and so to kind of go back over what you're asking about how do you deal with employees so they understand the expectations, and then the ones that aren't, how do you manage that?
Yes. Yes.
Well, look, nobody likes controversy. If they do, I probably don't want them on my team. But I'm not looking for controversy. But part of having those conversations is really for them. And how do you help them make the next step? How do you coach them forward? But I'll also be honest with you, Matt, the worst thing you can do is keep people on your team that can't get you there. From Barbara Corcoran, I had met her in one of her comments. She's on Shark Tank. You probably know. One of her comments to me was, shoot the dogs early. If they can't get there, make the change. And I know it sounds cold. It doesn't mean really shoot anybody.
Right.
Salespeople, again, my opinion, which is so important to most business, is having people that can sell, is I believe that salespeople, again, it's probably controversial, really are born that way. That's who they are. That's the way they're extroverts. That's what they love to do. They're people's people.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't take an introverted person and make them, in my opinion, a really good salesperson that's face to face. And so, that's just a skill set they have.
Yes.
Just like you can't drive into somebody to have work commitment and ethics. I mean, they either have it or they don't. They want to work. They want to get it done. And so, I think what I coach people is look at what they do right, and is that enough that you can build off of it, and can you grow them? And if they can't, then make the change. Right? I was at one of our properties, Matt, and I have people that sell anywhere between 2 to 5 houses a month, and I met this guy and I said, "How long you been with us?" He said, "Oh, been here, Mr. Schaub, 3 months." I said, "Oh, great. And what do you do?" "Well, I'm the sales here in this community." I said, "Oh, great. How many houses have you sold in 3 months?" He said, "None yet, but I'm working on it." And I thought, if you haven't sold one house in 3 months, I think we got a problem.
Mm-hmm.
And so, obviously we weren't setting expectations. Maybe we hadn't coached him well. Maybe he was in the wrong job. But to come to find out what this guy did in his past, nice person, but was afraid to ask for the money. And a lot of salespeople that are good, they're not afraid. They'll sit you down and say, "Hey, Matt, let's sit down and get the application. I'm going to need a check from you for $300," and they just kind of get it going. It's a natural with them. You just hear them, and people just kind of flow with it. And I think you have to have that hard conversation if you're the manager or the leader of that team, and set the expectations. And as I mentioned people earlier, as you measure it, if they're not moving the needle, you have to be willing to adjust, and that means possibly going in a whole new direction. I believe time is your enemy. If you wait forever, it's not about making the change; it's everything you're giving up till you do. And so, again, people don't like to talk about that side of it, but it's part of the business. You have to surround yourself with great people that can get you to the destination.
Yes, well, I think that's a key point. Just you've brought up a couple times, and it's expectations, right? Are we setting the right expectations for our team so they know what they're getting into, what the bar is set, where the bar is set, and let's help coach them along as best we can to hit that and hopefully exceed that. But right person, right role at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And even today, CEO, I tell people that's what I do best, is look at the team and navigate who can go where. And I think even with salespeople, different types of businesses, product, is do you have the right person? It could be if they're working in a store environment, what's the volume? What's the clientele like? Have you looked at it as a leader and said, where do they fit best? And if you're a salesperson, have you looked at it and said, look, I like fast, high pace, I want to write X amount of deals? You probably need to meet with your boss and say, look, where can I make the biggest difference? Or you might be somebody, look, you're looking for something where you have more time. It's not the constant pressure, but you can really spend time with your customer. It's like home sales. I'll be honest with you. It's not a go and go like a car dealership.
Right.
It's time. It's an investment. We build the house. It takes time to get it ready, get them in the house, bring them through the process. And so it's a relationship that you build. It's a marathon, not a race. I'm sorry. You follow
not the sprint. Yes. Yep.
It's not a sprint.
The marathon, not the sprint. Yes, exactly. Exactly. Okay. Well, and I want to go back to sales real quick. And I know we're almost out of time. So be very aware of your time so you can get off and do what you need to do. Keep the business going and growing.
No worries. I enjoy talking to you.
When you look, we talked a little bit about sales teams specifically and them setting goals, things like that. What do you think makes, I'm going to use your words, a good sales team versus an amazing sales team?
Well, I think a good sales team is looking at how they meet the expectation, right? Where do you want me to go? Boss will get it done. Let's get it figured out. And they really are good followers of what the direction is. And so they're meeting expectation. You're going to have them, right?
Yes.
I think an amazing sales team is one that's saying, yeah, I heard you. You want us to do X, but they're saying, how can we do better? How do we do even more? How do we push it? How do we drive it? What else can we add to it? Are there things we can help with social media? Can we be out there, whatever, doing bandit signs,
Hmm.
reaching out to employers? When I mentioned that deal earlier, pedal to the metal, we had salespeople going and meeting with employers, and they would go to places. Give an example. They went to one office. They said, "Well, we get everybody together on Thursdays." And they said, "Hey, can we bring coffees and donuts for the entire team and get 5 minutes?" And they went in there and they said, "Hey, let us tell you about this great opportunity we have for you to own your own home." And out of that, they got 3 deals. People
Really?
came to the communities and bought houses. And so there's people that wait, and and this is a challenge right now for salespeople, Matt. A lot of times, depending on what they're selling, they're waiting for someone to call them. They're waiting for the phone to ring. I like people that go out and make the phone call, so they're not waiting for the phone to ring and say, "Hey, I want to tell you about an opportunity. I want to spread the word." They're out there trying to make the business, generate business. And those are usually the salespeople, frankly, that excel far beyond. And they ask everybody, "Hey, do you know anybody? And do you know anybody? Do you know anybody?" And out of that, they sit there and cultivate multiple deals, because these relationships are out there working for them, saying, "Hey, do you know anybody that needs X or Y or Z?" And they say, "Actually, I do know somebody," and that's how you get the next one and the next one,
Yes.
and get the referrals. But I think the great teams are looking for ways to exceed. I think the good teams find a way to meet expectation. Right, as I say, they're solid B students, but I've tried to surround myself with A students, people that want to go up and beyond. And I encourage it, my company. I encourage you to help us help you do better.
Mm. The expectation is set. We encourage you to help us help make you better.
That's right.
You follow up, you measure, you circle back, you're consistent with the message.
You remember Jerry Maguire? Did you ever see
Yes.
that show? And I use it all the time. It says, "Help me help you."
Mm.
Right, and that's what it's about. Help me help you. Right, I want to get you there, but you have to help me do that. And anyway, I'm always looking for those things that kind of help motivate and drive people, like those type of sayings.
Yes. Yeah. Jerry Maguire saw it the other day. It's like, show me the money. Show me
That's
the
right.
money.
Show me the
So
money. I remember it well. I've used that saying a few times.
yes, yes. Well, I think that's critical. I love oftentimes I think natural tendency of humans is I think every human wants to help. Now, to what extent, I think it differs by person, but I think we have that in us that we want to help others. And what I see a lot is there's that fear, and I've had that in my past, right? Fear of going to talk to my boss about that, of like, kind of like, can I help myself? Like, I need you, boss, to help me because I'm confused. And there's that fear there of, as if, I don't know if it's a male thing or what, but if you go ask for help, it's seen as a sign of weakness.
Yeah, I hear you on that. I think that you have to, be willing to get advice and support and direction in life, as you go forward. And I think that's a good point, right? I think people sometimes are so worried about everybody else around them that they use that energy almost negatively, instead of
Yes.
just saying, "I'm going to use all of my energy to go forward. And I'm just going to do the very best I can." And I always tell people, when you're done, if you can say, "I left nothing on the floor," whether you win or lose, that's all I can ask from you. But you just
Mm.
got to tell me you left nothing there. If you did, you're going to regret it. And so I thought his comment, I've always lived by that and run a lot of my business on, is that I don't really worry about my competitors. I don't care how big my company is. I just go full speed. And by doing that, it's allowed us to be incredibly successful, and really allowed us to influence a lot of people around us.
Love that. Love that. My goodness. And what a great way to, end this and get people fired up and motivated and to go do amazing things, like go full tilt. I agree. I think sometimes we set sideways, we look sideways, we look behind us, we look all these different ways instead of forward of, that's where I'm going.
Amen. Amen. I think sometimes people are so busy looking around, Matt. And I'll leave you with one last thing.
Mm.
I was listening to a guy one day, and I thought, what great advice. Sometimes people are so busy looking around and seeing what else there might be around them They don't realize the gold is right in front of them. All they have to do is pick it up. And so sometimes, people just are so focused on everything but what's right there. And what's right there is really the pot of gold. They just need to stop and pick it up and make it happen. So my advice to people would be sometimes realize what you've got is a pretty great opportunity and find a way to maximize every day.
We started this podcast talking about gold nuggets, and you just circled the wagons. We ended with gold nuggets.
We did, my friend. We did. I enjoyed our conversation. It went fast.
I love it. Yeah, it sped up. Well, last question, Steve, and then I'll let you go. If people want to learn more about you, Yes Communities, how can they best connect?
Yeah, absolutely, Matt. I think that, first of all, I'm on LinkedIn, and not a bad place to connect.
Yes, we'll put your link.
I am on there. The company is yescommunities.com. So www.yescommunities.com. And feel free to look at it. Look at our stories. Look at a lot of good things we do for people. I have a philosophy of, leave it better than we found it. And we do a lot of things for people. We're not perfect. I'm going to be honest with you. We make a lot of mistakes. But we're out there. We're on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're probably on 50 different social platforms. I actually have somebody that's all they do. And again, like I said, hire people better than me. They're much better at it than I am. And they keep us out there. And those are the best places if you want to see something honest. And I just tell anybody on here, I wish you the best and stay focused and be committed and eyes forward.
Awesome. Steve, can't thank you enough. Can't wait till our next conversation. I think we could spend hours talking, and
we could, my friend.
We'll do a part 2 one of these days, but thank you so much for your time today.
You're welcome. Hey, have a great day, and I look forward to seeing you in the near future.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you for joining us today on the Matt Phillips Podcast. If you are like us, we know that you are here to do great things, to become the sales leader that makes things happen and drives big-time sales results. We know you have that big vision, and we are here to help get you where you want to go. We're here to help you develop that unstoppable, rock-solid leadership skill set and help you train to master the one true differentiator, mental toughness. We would love to be part of your journey. So if you are ready, head over to mattphillipscoaching.com and check out the ways that we can help. As always, please share this episode and make sure you subscribe by clicking the button below. Thank you again. And now, go crush the day.